Hey, Memoir Tribe. Welcome back. Today's guest, Diane Pomerantz, is a clinical psychologist and the author of the powerful memoir Lost in the Reflecting Pool. It's an intimate story about how she fell in love with a charming, magnetic man who over time revealed himself to be a bona fide narcissist, and how Diane found the courage to see the truth and begin again. Through her writing, Deanne brings us inside the emotional terrain of a relationship built on illusion, where love and control intertwine, and what it takes to reclaim your voice after years of gaslighting and self doubt. Her story is brave, raw, and ultimately redemptive. It's about rediscovering identity, trusting intuition, and healing after emotional abuse. In our conversation, we talk about love, denial, awakening, and what it means to rebuild a life grounded in truth. This one's powerful, and I'm honored to share it with you. Let's get into it.
Hi, Deanne.
Hi, it's nice.
Welcome.
Well, not welcome, but thank you. Good to be here.
Thank them. I've been really looking forward to this. Wow, what a book you have written. And I think, like we were kind of talking about earlier, it's an important conversation for us to start having as a society.
Mhm.
So, for those who are not familiar, why don't you just go ahead and kick it off by giving us idea of what your book is about, and maybe kind of tell us what drew you to memoir for sharing it.
Okay. Um, well, this is the second edition of my book. Lost in the Reflecting Pool, a memoir, was originally published in 2017, and it was a straight memoir. Um, and I am a psychologist. So it is a story of my marriage, which started out as many abusive marriages do, um, as a wonderful relationship. Um, we had some life struggles in terms of having fertility issues, but we weathered those. We adopted a child. We went through fertility treatment. We then had a son. We had a daughter that we adopted. We then had a son through IVF. All of that we weathered. Um, about, I don't know, at some point towards the end of the marriage, about 18 years in, I was diagnosed with an aggressive breast cancer with a very, very bad prognosis. Things had been not going well for some time at that point. And my then husband really became abusive, not physically, um, but really sadistic,
Mm.
especially during my treatment for cancer. Um, and um, there was no way I could stay in the marriage.
Mm.
So it's that story. It's sort of coming to terms with um, see what you see and you don't see at the same that you don't acknowledge at the same time. I started the first memoir, with a quote from a book by Leah Hager Cohn. It was, and I'll read it. It's very short. It's, "In some ways, I think every wrong turn I was to make could be traced to moments of inaction, moments when I noticed things unfolding wrongly and failed to query or object." And that was a line from Heat Lightning by Leah Hager Cohn. And I think that's been was a pattern of my life. I just saw things, I noticed them, and I didn't say anything.
I think a lot of people can relate to that,
I
right?
think so too.
Yeah.
And that was so I saw things throughout the marriage. You know, very shortly after we got married, there was a day, I don't know, my husband had said something to me. I was in a bad mood. And he said something to me about, he was just very non-supportive, unsupportive. And I remember thinking, it was so crystal clear, and I never forgot it. If I ever, now this is years before I got sick. If I ever really get sick, he's not going to be able to be there for me.
You knew it from the beginning, huh?
And that I had that thought, and that was it. I just had that thought. He maybe said one sentence to me, but there was something in what he said that I knew it.
Yeah.
I had that thought. And it didn't occur to me again until I was told I was probably going to be not seeing my children get through elementary school. And then I remembered that I had had that thought. Um, so it was, seeing things and not acknowledging it and not saying anything.
Sure. Very common in an abusive relationship.
And very common for women.
Very true. Very true. So, a lot of traumatic and challenging life events, infertility issues, breast cancer, and dealing with a living in a narcissistic abusive relationship. So maybe can you tell us, I can use his name, right? It's right in the
Yes,
book.
because
Okay.
it isn't his real name.
Oh, okay. Okay. So tell us what initially attracted you to Charles. What kicked that off?
Well, he's very bright. And we laughed all the time. It was as if we knew each other forever from the first date.
Mm,
Now, looking back now, because I'm divorced a long time now, but looking back, I've always been a laugher. He really was not a laugher. We laughed together. I mean, belly laughs about, the absurdities of life. I mean, we could laugh, we just laughed all the time. We were on the same wavelength. And he knew he was interesting. He was idiosyncratic. I was probably a much more cautious person. So I did things that I, on my own, probably wouldn't have done. We went on whitewater canoeing trips. On my own, I probably wouldn't have done that. But I really enjoyed the things he introduced me to.
sure, sure. You brought out a side in each other
Yeah,
that the other one may have not had
right.
without, right?
And he was very smart, very clever, and that was a quality I really liked.
He was a psychiatrist too, right?
I'm a psychologist, he was a
Okay,
psychiatrist.
that's right.
He had some idiosyncratic ideas, which I thought were a little weird. But no, he and I introduced my closest friend to a close friend of his. And they then became a couple who then also married. So it was my closest friend was married to his close friend.
Which just digs those roots down a little bit deeper.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
And she moved from Maryland to New Jersey, and he was involved in this psychiatric group, this weird psychiatric group in New Jersey. And we would go up there all the time, and he would have meetings, and my friend and I would always get together, and then we had kids at the same time. It was just, you know, it was easy to ignore things.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's
I got to keep my best friend, and I mean, it sounds silly, but that really was part of it.
yep.
And I met him when I was about 30. I really wanted to have a family at that point. So, I mean, that wasn't why, but he had all the qualities.
Mm,
He was smart. He, had a profession. We had interests professionally
mm,
in common. Um, as I say, we laughed all the time. Things I didn't pay attention to were other people didn't like him so much. Or when it was just the two of us, we had a great time. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a wedding at this old friend's, the daughter of this old friend who we introduced. And I took my son as the plus one. And my son and I had a wonderful time at the wedding. And afterwards, I thought to myself, even though my ex was friends with them, I wouldn't have had as much fun, even when things were good, as I did going with my son.
okay. I mean, it makes sense. I don't think it sounds strange at all. I think things become normal, and then your normal is your normal, and it
To
takes
read,
a lot to undo that, right? Especially after you have two children, an adopted child and a son that you gave birth to, right? Your life's just carried on. So at what point did you really start to notice that things were off? Like you knew you were in trouble?
well, this is interesting because I bring it up in the prologue as sort of foreshadowing. There was an incident. We moved into a house, which I loved. And the neighbor's cat would come back to the house. Not the neighbor's cat, the previous owner's cat would come
Mm.
back to the house. And my kids loved it. And they were really little. They were 2.5 and 5 at the time. And they loved having the cat come. But it really bothered Charles. There were probably a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
But and one, I guess I should say what he did. He wound up killing the cat.
Wow.
And when I wrote the memoir, what I originally did, and when I first was really writing it, I sort of stuck it in a late chapter. And when somebody read it, the person said to me, that really shouldn't be stuck as a line in the back chapter. That's really the hook.
I would agree with that. I mean, it's a pretty big deal. And that was probably your first sign of actual were you questioning the big N word of narcissism at that point?
No,
Okay.
it wasn't. When it happened,
Mm,
no. What happened was I just became depressed. And now
mm.
this is years before, about 8 years before I got cancer. I just became depressed and I did withdraw from him. I had no idea it was about the cat. I forgot about it. It was as if I buried it under a pile of clothes, stuck it in the closet, and closed the door, which is
Hmm.
what I think people do with traumatic events.
Yes.
If you don't open the closet door and then look under the pile of clothes, you don't see it and you can forget about it. It's still there. If someone had brought it up, I would have remembered it,
Right.
but I didn't think about it. And then when I was diagnosed and I was really talking in therapy, I went into therapy and talking about how sadistic he was being. I mean, he brought me at the hospital when I was in the hospital 2 statues that were angels. One was a bag lady angel. I was in the hospital. I had just had surgery. And they brought me a bag, an old lady with wings, a decrepit old lady who had a bag, a brown paper bag. I mean, it wasn't paper, it was ceramic. And she was an angel. I mean, it was the most bizarre looking thing I ever saw.
Well, I think it's important to mention too that they were gifts that were given to him by a client that he didn't
Yes,
buy. And he
right,
let you know that. He told you
right,
that, right?
right.
Yeah.
And, and the nurse comes in and she says, because he put them to decorate my room. The nurse comes in and says, "What are those?" And she said, "Do you like them?" I mean, I was still pretty much unconscious from the anesthesia.
Right.
I mean, it was really bizarre
Mm.
and perverse. Um, so, but by that time I was talking about those things. And one day my therapist's cat walked by the window outside and I had a panic attack.
Mm.
And that's when I recalled him killing the cat.
Wow. So it's almost like you had repressed it. It wasn't just a memory buried under the laundry. It was like
And
really, really buried. Yeah.
it was really buried. But I published the book and then I was on a book tour. I was in San Francisco and somebody from the audience who had read the book said something about now, and I knew I did it because it was a hook at this point. She said, "That must have been the most terrifying thing when he killed the cat for you and for you must have been terrified for yourself and your children."
Yeah. Did it feel threatening?
Until this woman when I went on, was having this launch at a bookstore, and she said that it occurred. That was when it hit me how terrifying it was. The book was already out. It hit me at a whole new level.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about writing these kind of memoirs. You you process it at different levels at different times. I wrote it, and by this time I had processed a lot.
Hmm.
And I still hadn't really processed the terror that I had felt when he had killed the cat and the terror I felt for my children.
Yeah, I can only imagine because if he's capable of that, an innocent animal, regardless of how he feels about cats,
Right.
what else is he capable of?
Well, one of the things that happened right before we separated, we were looking at photos, and my daughter, when she was always very artistic. And she had, when she was 7, was going through her backpack and clearing it out one day. And she had stapled together 3 pieces of paper and had made, it was a dog head, but it was like, I don't know if you're familiar with Klee's picture of a cat
Hmm.
head. And it's like in 3 parts. But this was a dog, but it looked just like what's in the Museum of Modern Art. It's amazing, an
Yeah.
amazing piece. And she was 7. And so we straightened it out. I took it to a frame shop, I got it framed, and it always was hanging in our house. So we're looking through pictures, we're going to separate. And he says, "I want that picture." And I said about my daughter, I said, "Well, Ellie knows where she wants to hang it. She wants us to take it to our house." And he said, "I want it." I said, "But it's Ellie's. She wants it." And he got furious and he said, "Get out of my sight, or I don't know what I'm going to do." And I said, "What are you going to do? Shoot me like you shot Mr. Buttons?" I had never said. And I ran out of the room. I mean, I had never said anything like that. I didn't even know I thought it. It just like I spewed it out and I ran.
Yeah, well, I imagine at this point you had already kind of made up your mind, and every moment after that is probably excruciating dealing with what you were dealing with. So, at what point were you able to label it narcissism?
Um, it was really, I mean, I was beginning to at the point we separated. Um, even as, I mean, I did a lot of work with personality disorders as a psychologist, but I had a hard time labeling it with him until really later. Now, when I look back, we were talking about the laughing. Now I know he was mirroring me, which is an early part of he was taking on my characteristics. I have always, the way I deal with stress is to laugh at myself and to make other people laugh. That's the way I deal with everything, not by telling jokes. I'm not a jokester,
Right.
but
You just make light of stuff.
I
Yeah.
make light of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was the way we interacted,
Mm.
you know, and he was not like that in any other circumstances, only with me.
Wow. And you didn't pick up on that until way, way later when
Wait,
you
after
had
we were,
separated?
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Um, I knew he was controlling, and I knew he never said he was sorry.
Mm.
And I knew he projected everything onto everybody else, but I didn't put it together. And I knew he could be sadistic. And I knew this and I knew that. And I hear myself saying it.
It's kind of like the cleaning lady who has a filthy house, right? So it might be easy to apply in your professional world to people that you don't have an emotional
Right.
attachment to, but easy to overlook with the ones that you do. And some of them, honestly, some narcissists are so covert that
Well,
it's
and he
really
was.
difficult to pick up on. On that note, would you mind explaining for us maybe the definition of an actual narcissist? We were talking a little bit earlier about how that term seems to be thrown around so cavalierly these days. I think
Yes.
it merits an explanation or a definition. Do you mind?
Narcissism, and I used to say this about him that, as time went on, I said it. Um, there's this presentation or this feeling of grandiosity, but the sense of self is really very fragile. They don't really have much of a sense of self. And so they take on what they think will fulfill their needs. Everything is in order to meet their needs, get their own needs met, because they don't have any way to meet their own needs. They can't self-soothe. Everything is for the purpose of getting their needs met. And people are replaceable.
Mm-hmm.
So it, I, we talk about, or I talk about need gratifying objects. They're replaceable. I was replaceable with somebody who at some point would be able to meet his needs. And, once I was going to die, or he was told that it was likely I was going to die, and I already had withdrawn when I became depressed. I was no longer so adoring. Then I would get angry at it. Before I didn't get angry when I just let it go if he would be controlling. If I would hang a picture and he told me he had been an architect before he had been a psychiatrist. And he liked the screws, the lines horizontal when you had a screw. I didn't make a big deal about it. It was like not a
Sure.
big deal to me. I didn't take after he killed the cat, those things started to annoy me.
Well, and they started stacking up and stacking
And
up and stacking
right.
up, right?
And
Until
everything,
you viewed him differently.
and when he would say to me, "Is that really a good use of your time?" When I wouldn't take it so lightly anymore.
Mm.
Yes, it is a good use of my time. I'm taking the kids and we're going somewhere.
Yeah, not that I need to explain anything to you. Do you
Right.
know by chance, just out of curiosity, this is something that I've wondered for a while and I just haven't taken the time to research it. Do we have any idea what causes this kind of a personality disorder? Is it
Well,
something that's nature or is it nurture?
well, I think it's always both.
Mm.
But I think usually it's where there really wasn't anyone who really was able to really meet the needs emotionally, be in tuned with the particular needs temperamentally of the child. Now, sometimes it's abusive parents,
Mm.
but sometimes it's just, you know, his mother was she was kind of flaky, and she was a nice woman, but she just didn't get him.
Mm.
And she started potty training him when she had him on the potty chair when he was like 2 or 3 months old. She would sit him on the potty. Now it was a different generation, but still,
Mm.
there were movies of him sitting on and he and I, when we first early in the relationship, we would laugh about it, but it really said a lot about his personality.
Right. Looking back, hindsight is always 2020. So
Uh,
when did you make the mental decision? Not necessarily start taking the actions, but when can you identify when you made the mental and emotional decision that it was time to go, that at some point you had to get
well, I mean, well, I had finished treatment and for cancer, and he was having a relationship with a patient,
out?
and I discovered that. And I mean, and then, and he then, I mean, he did a bunch of sadistic things. He was really playing head games with me.
Can we talk a little bit about while you were going through your treatment, which was really grueling treatment for breast cancer? Like your prognosis was not good. So you had to go to extensive lengths in terms of like chemotherapy and stuff. Can we
Yeah,
talk a little bit about where he was in terms of support during all of that time?
he wasn't. I mean, I was fortunate that my father and I had a wonderful group of friends.
Mhm.
I was really, and I had wonderful doctors. I had a wonderful medical team. So I don't feel like I didn't have support, but I didn't have my husband. Um, the first 2 weeks, I sort of thought I did, but maybe the third week I was saying something to him and I said how wonderful everyone was being. And he said, well, you say cancer to someone and it has nothing to do with you. They just get worried and anxious. So they're not being nice because it has anything to do with you. And then a couple of weeks later, he was sitting and eating dinner. And again, I said something and he said, is this all we're going to talk about for the next year? How about if you want to say something, you ask me if I feel like talking about it before you say anything about it. So I never talked about cancer again.
For an entire year of treatment.
Well, I
You never
mean,
brought it up to him again.
but I never, I really
Right.
stayed.
You didn't have your husband. I mean, I was grateful to hear that you had friends because I think a common, if I'm not mistaken, a common characteristic of the narcissistic personality is that they alienate their spouse from friends. So, and your dad was fantastic. Oh,
He was.
that tugged at my heartstrings. He was there for you every step of the way.
Yeah, he
Thank
was.
goodness you had that. Yeah.
But um, I had a lot of friends, and
Mm.
they were there, and I had doctors who were there. I had my reconstructive surgeon offered to lend me money when my husband said he was going to take away my medical insurance. And he said, if
Oh,
you need money, I will give you money. I mean, I
oh,
didn't take money from her, but that was the kind of care I got from people.
yeah.
I had tremendous support.
About as fortunate as you can be in a very unfortunate situation.
Yes, I really did. I was, I was fortunate. I mean, I went through a stem cell transplant, and the fortunate thing about it is, because it was grueling, is that I was in a state of delirium for the 3.5 weeks I was in the
Right.
hospital, so I don't remember it.
Right, because just for people listening, when you do the stems, it's called stem cell rescue,
Rescue, yeah,
right? So
yeah,
they basically take you to the brink of death and
yeah,
then reintegrate your own stem cells to bring you back,
yes.
right?
So you really are at the brink of death. I mean, you have no blood count,
Wow.
and you're you literally, I mean, and so you're on intravenous feeding, and all the tissues in your body are swollen and infected. And at one point I had in delirium, a state of delirium, pulled out the central line, so I had to be rushed back into
Mm.
surgery. I, but as I say, I remember very little
Right.
because I was delirious, which led to complications afterwards. I think it probably contributed to my developing the seizure disorder I then developed as a side effect that lasts continues that I have to this day.
Wow. From the state of delirium or just from
Well,
how taxing it was on your body?
I think if you're in a state of delirium for that length of time, the kind of it's a trauma to the brain.
Hmm.
And I had had a previous concussive experience. So I had had an abnormal EEG. I didn't have seizures, but that had been prior to the cancer. But I think that tipped the scales.
How long were you in the state of delirium? That's a
Uh,
medical term, right? I have personal experience with that. It is like it's delirium is a medical term.
yes,
You're literally like not here. Your lights are on, but nobody's home. How long were you in that state of delirium?
about 3 weeks.
Holy cow, that's a really long time.
It is. It is a really long time. It is a really long time.
Man,
Maybe not about, it was about maybe a little less, but close to 3 weeks.
is that normal for that procedure? Or is it just because you were in ICU and everything was off?
Well, it was because it was my response to the medication they were giving me and the pain medication. And I don't respond so well to pain medication. And I don't think they were aware initially that I was in a state of delirium.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. My father-in-law had a transplant about a year and a half ago, and because he was in ICU and it was at the Veterans Hospital, so there weren't any windows, and in the intensive care unit, you don't get any rest. They're constantly in and out of your room, and things are beeping. He developed delirium, and it lasted for several weeks as well. But it
Uh,
was so obvious, like it was terrifying just to witness it.
uh,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know how, I mean, they were in my room a lot, but I had no idea. I had to, it was very,
I can only imagine. And then the one person that you should be able to lean on isn't there.
yeah.
Yeah. So how did writing your memoir help you process all of these things? You talked about it a little bit, how it kind of came in layers.
Well, and it did come in layers. It's kind of like peeling back an onion.
Mm.
But first of all, I wasn't sure if I was going to write it as a novel or as um a memoir. First, to start, I was going to write a book about my cancer experience.
Mm.
And I was still with my husband at the time when I was going to write that. And that was going to be a memoir. And I asked him if he wanted to read the beginning, and he said, not really, but if it helps you to write it, that's okay.
Thanks for the support, babe.
Right. Anyway, but then I read Nora Ephron's book, and I thought it was so wonderful. So, but I knew I couldn't write something like that.
I'm not familiar with it. Is it a
Oh,
fictional novel?
yes, but it's a fictional novel, but it's the truth. It's like
Okay. It's
it's
called
auto
autofiction, right? And it's
fiction.
called Heartburn.
And
Mm.
it is I I mean so funny. But so I mean he was going to sue her. Woodward was going to sue her. Bob Woodward was going to sue her because it's about their marriage.
So she had to turn it into an autobiographical fiction. That happens a lot. That
And
happens a lot.
that was sort of what I was going to do.
Yeah.
So then when I decided to make it a memoir, I'm still not sure, but I changed my name and I made my son twins. This is kind of funny, but changing my name,
Mm.
even though it was a memoir, and even though I made my son twins, it was all the true story.
Hmm.
That gave it, I mean, everything was real.
Yeah.
That gave me a little bit more distance that allowed me to, I think, process it. It
How
was
interesting.
so what was this? I have some funny stories about it. I was then told when I got closer to wanting to publication that first of all, I couldn't publish a memoir with a different name, that I had to use my name. So everybody else's names were different.
Yeah.
And I also couldn't publish my son as a twin. Now, I feel that really shouldn't be true. Pregnancy with my son started out as quads.
Four of them. Yeah, that's right.
And he was a survivor. I have to tell you, you were asked as one of the questions, what was the hardest thing?
Mm.
It was giving up my twins. And I
Mm.
had to give up the twins. I have to tell you, that was giving up my name, all right. But giving up the twins, I'll tell you two stories about this because they were so funny. Sammy was in college, was about to
Okay.
graduate from college, and we're in the car. I went up to visit him at school, and I'm saying he's about to graduate in a couple of months. I'm saying to him, and he's still a twin in the book. And I'm saying to him, and I'm writing about him in the book. And I say, I feel like I should be going to two graduations. And he looks at
Because you
me
were so immersed in it.
and he rolls his eyes like, Mom, you are really crazy. Like, only a kid can look at you. Like, Mom, you are really nuts.
Right.
But then, like, I don't know, 6 months later, I had already given up the twins. And he and his sister and I are in New York City at a Thai restaurant, and I said, I want to tell you something. It is now a memoir, and you're not a twin anymore. And he turns to me and he said, You killed my brother? It was so funny. But that really was how I felt.
Mm.
Like I killed his brother.
I imagine.
I said, it's still you. It's always been you. But I was working when I first, this was when I was doing the first draft, and I had gone to this writing retreat to work on it and I got involved in this writing contest.
Hmm.
But before I went to the retreat, it was up in Vermont. I was working with someone. Do you know Story Circle?
No.
It's a women's writing group
Okay. You said
on
it's called Story Circle?
the Story Circle.
Oh, okay.
And they have all kinds of classes. And I started working with a mentor through them. And that's how I really got into being serious about working on the memoir. And I felt like she was my muse and
Mm.
really helped me stick with writing it. And she loved me having the twins. And because she had twin stepsons. And when I would write my stories about the twins, she loved them. Anyway, she helped me work through giving them up.
Sure.
Um, there was a point to this, but it was a real process
Yeah.
to give them up.
Yeah. I can
Um,
imagine.
it
But it was
really,
probably kind of
it,
healthy, really, for because it
well,
was one more layer that you had peeled back,
yes.
right?
Well, and it was the layer of dealing with, which I hadn't realized. It was dealing with all the losses of all the miscarriages, the all the pregnancy law, all the pregnancy losses I had had,
Mhm.
including the quadruplets. I always wanted a lot of kids.
Mm,
Always. I was lucky. I felt I was lucky. My two children are miracles.
right.
And my son is about to get married in a few weeks, and I feel now I'm going to have another daughter.
Oh, congratulations. That's always a fun time. If I remember in the book too, you had adopted Ellie and you got pregnant with Sammy and the quadruplets right as your doctor said no more, right? So you were ready to just be done. Grateful that you had Ellie. And of the four quadruplets that took, Sammy's the one that made it through. And so
Right,
you actually did end up having a biological child from
right,
that
right.
last IVF.
Yes, yes, he was the survivor. And
Mm,
then when I don't know, Ellie was about 6 or 7. There was no, maybe it was when she was older because we may have been separated by then. There was a story on Time, the cover of Time magazine, of quad with a picture of quads. We
mm.
always would tease Sammy, this could have been you,
Dan, I
But
would love to hear you read a piece from your book. Did you pick a piece to read to us?
I did.
Let's hear it.
Hey, this is one chapter and the beginning of another. It's not long. Um, the next day was Charles's day in Washington. He left early. I got the children up and drove them to school. Ellie was now in middle school, and Sammy was also in a new school. After dropping them off, I headed for home, not having to be at the office for several hours. I made a spontaneous left turn at Park Heights Avenue, even though I wasn't sure why. 2 more turns and I was at the office. All the time, not really thinking and somewhat dazed. I parked the car, unlocked the doors, keyed in the combination, and walked in. There were no lights on because no one was there yet. It was early. I went straight back to Charles's office and directly to the shelves above his desk. I reached up and pulled off the first book and looked for an inscription. There was none. Then I reached up again, and there it was. Exactly what I was unknowingly looking for. A letter from Victoria. Articulate at times and in tortured English at others. Clearly trying hard to match the intellectual depths she imagined the recipient to possess. She wrote, "My dear Charles, hovering just beneath the surface, caught in my throat, admittedly, but with increasing insistence, is the impulse, thought, perhaps feeling, that next weekend's planned escapade to Cape Cod is not in my best interest, and likely not in yours either, although I hesitate to speak for you. When our relationship veered from its intended path, I lost my safe witness. I and the others inside, with aching hearts and souls, cannot bear to watch your pain or endure our own pain. I fear that you are not actively working on your relationship with D, for fear that your efforts might actually bring the two of you into alignment and place me in some psychological danger. If it is our karma to join together in body and soul in this universe or another, so it will be. I wish you love, Victoria." These are only excerpts. I couldn't read the entire letter just then. With a deep well of emptiness echoing inside me, I walked into the secretary's office, turned on the copy machine, and made 10 copies. "D, I stopped at Borders and got these books," Charles said as he tossed 2 paperbacks on the table. He smiled as he sat down. "Our anniversary is in a couple of weeks. Let's get away. Camille can stay with the kids. You pick the place." I glanced at the titles of the books: Intimate Weekends for Two and Romantic Weekend Getaways. It was hard for me to say anything. I looked at Charles incredulously. Then, without warning, I got up and ran into the bathroom and retched out the dinner I had eaten an hour earlier. My head felt dazed, and my skin was cold and clammy. Then, spent, I lay down on the tile floor and curled up with my cheek pressed hard against the coolness. "Wow, what happened? Are you okay, Dee? That was weird." I looked up at Charles's smile as he now sat next to me on the floor, gently placing his hand on my back. I sat up and he put his arm around my shoulder. "I wrote something today I wanted to give to you. It's from my heart and soul." He took a folded piece of paper from his pocket, and as we sat closely on the floor, his arm still around my shoulder, I read, "Thanksgiving. I never knew before you that I could talk heart to heart with my partner, and I never knew it was possible to laugh with one another as we did. You made it possible to find the way out of my cult by not pushing me. Having children had been a theoretical goal, not a real wish, until you. You endured unspeakable pain, unwavering to bring children to us. You have given of yourself to them ceaselessly, lovingly. At festive times, you have produced wondrous rich meals, celebrations of life, and at other times you taught me that restaurants are to be enjoyed. And now you are modeling courage in a way that can never be forgotten. For these things from you and more, am forever grateful. Forever yours, Charles." The words were there, but they sounded hollow to me. They didn't feel real or true. I wanted them to be true. I wanted to believe that he loved me, but I felt empty. In truth, there was no mention of love, only flowery words disconnected from real feelings. Dee, I am grateful to you for so much. I really want you to know that. Thanks. It's lovely. And as I spoke, that same empty feeling came over me, and I turned quickly to the toilet so I could throw up again. Later that evening, after the kids were in bed, he again handed me the books. Pick a place, Dee. It'll be fun, just like it was before the kids. Why was he doing this? It was crazy making. Nevertheless, I started looking through the books. Maybe he did mean these things. Maybe it would be okay. Maybe he did love me. Maybe he did want things to work out. Maybe he wanted to try. At about 10 o'clock, Charles said he was going to take Kanato, our old yellow lab, out for a walk. The kids were asleep, and I said that I'd go along with him. There was a long pause. Then he said, Dee, I just feel like having some time to myself. He smiled, picked up his cell phone, put it in his pocket, picked up the leash, got the dog, and walked out the door. Damn you, I yelled as the door closed. You're such a sadistic prick. You're driving me crazy.
Mm. So at this point, had you put together that the other woman was requiring him to try to work on his relationship, on his marriage before she was willing to
Yeah.
go any further?
Yes.
Wow, what did that feel like to know that he's putting forth this effort that is just total BS?
I I got a private investigator.
Oh, I bet you did. I bet you did. Man, man, that's dark. Your
Yeah.
title, Lost in the Reflecting Pool. Let's talk about that for a moment. What did it mean then? What does it mean now?
Well, at that initially, my first title was Shahrazad's Cancer. Um, Tales from the Arabian Nights. Like Shahrazad, who was telling the tales so the she wasn't killed by her husband. Um, I would be saving myself either from cancer or from my husband.
Mm,
But then I realized, Shahrazad was a storyteller, but she saved herself by her wiles. She had a voice.
mm,
I was much more like the Greek myth Narcissus and Echo. I was much more like Echo. I didn't use my voice, going back to that quote I used at the beginning.
mhm.
I was much more like Echo. I wasn't using my voice. So I was lost in the reflecting pool. It had to do with
Mm.
Ovid's myth of Narcissus and Echo. So that was the original meaning. But it also had to do, it has many meanings. It has the meaning of merging with each other. I talk at one of the early scenes in that on our first date is how our images merged. And it has to do with the mirroring, that's how he drew me in. And it's what a narcissist does. He draws you in, he mirrors you. So you feel like this person knows me so well. You become
Mm.
so dependent on them. And you become a reflection of them. Um, so that's another aspect of it. And more recently, the way I view it is I think what I want people to get from the title is How to Find Yourself in the Reflecting Pool. By reflecting on what you're doing,
Mm.
reflecting on yourself. And, one of the things I do I have I don't know what you call it, a column or something on Instagram, um, 6 word, 6 word memoir, Wednesdays, where it's a weekly writing prompt for people to um, reflect, write
I
and
love
reflect.
it.
Because I really think doing reflective writing is so important. I do women's writing groups, reflective writing groups, um, because I really believe writing my memoir that's one of the things that came out of me
Mm.
learning to do, and I do it in my practice.
This is on your Instagram page?
It is on my Instagram
I'm
page.
going to go check that out. Yeah, I think that's something that we could all probably use a lot more of, whether it's just in writing or in life. I mean, for you and I, writing is kind of what we go to when it comes to these kinds of things. But going back to our conversation earlier about how this whole narcissism is becoming more and more prevalent in our society, that sounds like a practice we could all probably benefit from, really.
Well, and I find, even in my individual work with people, that people find it so useful. It was really interesting because I started doing these women's groups right when COVID was starting,
Mm,
and they were 8-week groups, but people just kept signing up for the groups. And they were sort of just continuous with the same people in them because they were so powerful.
mm,
And it was interesting because it started out the first couple of sessions were in person, but then there was the lockdown. And so then they were online. Even I really didn't know if it would work online,
yeah.
but everyone like it was so powerful
Mm.
just doing the writing and the prompts and sharing it with each other.
Good for you. It's important work.
So it was just like, so people just, it is important and people just find it so helpful.
Mm.
So I really think that the writing, I mean, I think it's wonderful.
I'm all in for writing. I have figured I've learned so much about myself by just whether it's journaling or making notes, or sometimes I'll even just put my thoughts like vocally into my phone in a voice memo, and then I'll find them 3 months later because I completely forgot that I did it. And I can always glean something from it. Always. We learn from ourselves that way, I think. I
Yes,
think it's really important.
I think so too. And I think looking back, I mean, I think what you just said is so important because 3 months later, when you see it, it's going to mean something different than when you put it in your voice message.
Always, always. That's the same way with writing memoir too. I'll finish a chapter or I'll finish a scene, and I just kind of accumulate a stack of scenes, and I won't look at it for several months, and then I will go back and crack out an entirely new version because now I
Yes,
have a whole different perspective,
yes.
having
And
learned something new about myself once again. Were there any parts of your story that were particularly difficult to write, or that perhaps you considered not writing at all?
well, there were parts that I did not write.
Mhm.
The ones I wrote, I mean, there were some, I mean, I really didn't talk much about sexuality. And I stayed away from that.
Hmm.
I just, there was a lot more I could have said.
Okay.
I didn't, I don't even know, I don't think he knows that I wrote the book.
That was going to be one of my questions. Has there been any fallout?
Well, because I don't think he knows I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And, not that it's been a big hit, but I wrote 13, I sold about 13 to 15,000 copies of the first edition.
Wow.
So I mean, so it did sell.
It's
And
sold, yeah.
it is on, I mean, I'm on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was a lot more with the first edition. And he has no clue. I don't think he has. I think that I can't imagine knowing who he is that there wouldn't have been some fallout.
Right, that he wouldn't have at least said something.
Yes.
And your kids probably know better than to even bring it up.
Oh, they would never
Right.
have no, yes, they
Talk about initiating World War III, I'm sure.
right.
What did your writing process teach you about yourself?
Well, what I found, as a psychologist, I've had years of therapy, which has been helpful.
Mhm.
But writing the memoir, I have been so much more grounded than all my years. I mean, it combines with it, certainly,
Mhm.
because I am a reflective person. But I have to say that I am more grounded than I've ever been. It is as if I've things have come together for me in a way. I used to really, I mean, we all have ways of being in the world. Some of us are more anxious, some of us are more depressives. We all have our,
Sure.
I tend to be a more depressive type.
Okay.
So I'm upset, I get depressed.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I'm always functional because that's the way I deal with life, even if I'm depressed.
Sure.
But the but I don't have that in it. I don't have the kind of I'm much more grounded.
Why do you think that is? Do you think there's sometimes I will finish a scene and it'll be my idea of completely finished or a chapter. Like I have completely finished it. If an editor wants to change, I'm not changing this chapter. But there's some closure to that, right? There's some closure to penning it out and, putting a cover on it and calling it done.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I feel, you know, it's interesting. September 16th was my anniversary. Now, this year, the first time, it was like around 10 o'clock at night. I was in my appointment book. I saw it was September 16th. I had to stop and think, what was September 16th?
I know that date.
I know the date, but I couldn't think of what it was. We were married for 20 years, and it was the first year that I didn't know what the date was.
Yeah, it's a big chunk of your life.
It was a big chunk of my life.
Mm.
I mean, so I mean, I mean, I've known what the date is up until this year, but I looked at the date and I didn't know. Or the whole day I didn't know, and I saw the date the whole day.
That's good. I would say that you have healed. You have arrived.
But that's what I mean when I say there's a groundedness.
Mm.
It's like, you know, my son is getting married. I went to, they had an engagement party and he was there. And I had a I have really nothing. We don't have any contact with each other, but he was there. I had conversation with him.
Mm.
And at the end, I was leaving with my daughter and I went together and we were leaving. And he was one of the few people who was still standing around. And I was hugging people goodbye. I almost gave him a hug. I didn't. But I was in such a good mood
Yeah.
that I almost gave him a hug. It was like, it like, and I felt so good. I felt good I didn't, but I also felt good that I almost did, and that it didn't
Yeah.
bother me.
Yes, that you weren't bothered by his presence.
I
Yeah.
had a good time. I was talking to all the people and I was having a good time. And I have no feelings about our walking our son down the aisle together. It doesn't bother me in the least. In fact, I think
Right.
it's good. I think my son should have it. He wants both parents to walk him down the aisle.
Right. I think
And
in an ideal world, we should be able to us divorced parents should be able to provide at least that for our kids, right?
right. And so that's great. And I think
Yeah.
and you know what? I feel proud of myself that he wants that.
Yes.
I feel I may not have been perfect, but if he feels that way, I feel at least I didn't make it so he didn't feel that way.
Right. Yeah, no, your presence there is important and your support is important to him. Yeah, I think that's a
So that he
win. That's
wants
a
both
parental win.
parents to walk.
Yep.
I feel good about that.
Yeah, I agree.
So
What did you decide on for publishing? And was it different? You're from the two versions, your first and second version?
absolutely. The first time I went, and I went with She Writes Press. It is such a great community of authors.
Okay.
And there's, for someone who's never published before,
Mm,
you have so much support.
right.
That's the thing that was so great about She Writes Press. I
Yeah.
mean, I have a Russian edition out.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I mean, I got a lot from that.
Yeah. What have you learned? Actually, let me take that back and rephrase my question. How has publishing your book impacted you personally and professionally?
Um, professionally, professionally, it's impacted me, I guess. I don't know if it's impacted me more in terms of being a writer or a psychologist
Mm,
because of the subject matter, it has impacted me in terms of my expertise professionally as a psychologist.
mm,
And it and as a writer, it has impacted me being a psychologist. It gives me credibility in psychological material, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So,
Probably some confidence too.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I'm in the middle of writing a psychological thriller or psychological novel. Um,
A fiction?
uh-huh.
Oh, psychological fiction. Ooh, I'll be looking for that.
And that's really what I now want to be focusing on.
Mm.
Because
What can you tell us about it? Can you give us any deets?
it's it's a a kernel of the story is based on a case I had 40 years ago,
Mm.
of an abused child who committed a crime.
Okay. Yeah, I bet you've got some nuggets, huh?
The story is going to be very different.
What do you hope readers will take away from Lost in the Reflecting Pool?
Um, we don't have a choice. There's a quote. you know, we don't have a choice about the music that life plays for us,
Mm.
but we do have a choice about how we dance to it.
What a beautiful quote.
I don't know if that's the exact quote, but it's something like that. Um, and by looking at our own selves and reflecting on what we do, we have more choices.
Mm.
And I think that that's really important. I think, there's another thing. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got.
Isn't it the truth, though?
It really is.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
where's the best place for us to get a copy of your book?
well, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can get it, it's in all bookstores, Target,
Okay.
Walmart. I mean,
It's out there. If we wanted it, it's out there.
out
Do you
there.
have a website? Can we
I
purchase it from
do.
your website directly?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'll put that in the
Uh,
show notes. Okay.
www.dianepomerantzauthor.com.
Perfect. Well, this has been incredibly enlightening for me, this conversation. Thank you
I
so much again for taking the time to come on and talk about it with me. These subjects aren't easy, but I think they're necessary. I think this is something that with the way that our society is changing and technology and social media and the ability for people to just kind of get trapped in their own cocoon that constantly confirms what they think and how they feel. This conversation is incredibly important.
just one
Learning
other
how to
thing.
spot it and trying not to be it, right?
Yes. The only other thing I did want to say, because we said it earlier, was the thing about healthy narcissism.
Yes. Let's talk about that.
That it's really important to have healthy narcissism.
Mm,
Healthy narcissism is self-esteem. And in order to not be a victim of abuse, you need self-esteem.
mm,
In order to be successful in life, you need a certain degree of narcissism.
right.
Children, when children are showing off when they're little, that's healthy narcissism. When
Mm,
you encourage your children to be proud of themselves, and as parents, we want to encourage them to be proud of themselves. That's healthy narcissism.
right. And respecting yourself enough to be able to draw boundaries
Yes.
and
And to say
advocate
no,
and yes.
and to say, that's not okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay to abuse me.
Yeah.
It's not okay to talk to me that way. And it's important to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to yell and see, that's the reason that quote is so, I like that quote I said about being able to query and question,
Mm,
because you don't have to yell and scream.
hmm.
If you ask the questions, what is it? Why, what does that mean when you're doing that? Then you don't get to the point where you have to yell and scream and throw things.
Right.
When it builds up, that's when you yell and scream and throw things.
It's true. It's so true. But just you're right. By asking some simple open-ended questions, it'll reveal itself. The truth will
Yes.
reveal itself, right? And then you're
Then you know.
justified. No need to even get angry, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So, well, really enjoyed this. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'll be looking out for that psychological thriller sometime in the near future. I'll be following you, and I will put your website in the show notes so that people can go and order your book and let everybody know that they can get it on Amazon as well. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you. Take
Thanks so
care.
much.
Bye.